All right. It's actually working. So I think I close this. And then, you know, I wonder if people were trying to talk through this speaker before. Hopefully that actually works. And
No, they would have said something on Slack if nobody was paying attention.
yeah. Okay, we're live on YouTube. Oops. All right, we give a couple minutes for any stragglers to show up. And
yeah, there's a lot of traffic. Well, they have a fire convention, but then there's like a ton of other people. I don't know what else. Yeah, there's like lots of stuff going on.
yeah,
You should know, Kate. You work in. I'm not.
I'm sure it's all fascinating stuff.
You should memorize it all every day. They really have.
Do you mind if I turn off the lights again a little bit?
No, please do. I have a headache.
I could feel it yesterday halfway through class. I could feel it. It was like I looked at my phone and said, yeah, it's gonna rain tomorrow.
okay, so I'm gonna try to get this NodeMon thing working.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want some microphone? I do have some.
I didn't eat breakfast for lunch today.
No, it's not good too.
Maybe that's a help. Yeah, I'm really bad sometimes about eating. I can just sit. I literally like forget to eat all the time. My boyfriend yells. I get cranky and tired.
I tried doing that big long Docker run and that gives me this error, so I tried just starting over completely and I still get that error.
Pretty much enjoy it.
Does that mean that it's already there?
Yeah. So if you do Docker PS, you should see it.
Okay,
So you could stop that or just leave it running, which is fine.
okay.
Just go back into it. Yeah. So yeah, if you do Docker PS and you see, okay, let me remove these. If you see it running when you do Docker PS, you can't run that same command again, the Docker run, a huge long one, because it is going to, it's going to try to use port 5432, and only one thing can be listening on that port at a time. So that's what's. Okay, so for some reason, I can't do nodemon server.js. It just doesn't, oh, it's probably because it doesn't exist. It doesn't print it out.
Not in your folder, maybe?
Yeah, I'm not in the right folder. Nice for it's an error or something. Okay, so cool. This is what Max was on about with the nodemon.
It's
instead
great.
of just Node, you install NodeMon and do NodeMon service.js, and then this will restart. I assume if I save this, it restarts. Brilliant. And so we can leave the local tunnel open. If you remember, the careersencode.localtunnel.me is where my server is running. So if you want to be able to connect to mine. So if we do, let's make sure that is true. Do the receive, get a 404.
So you want us to connect to your server?
Oh, it already crashed. I mean, so this is like if you want, like, what do people think? Do you want to try to go a little slower today so you can try to follow along on your own, or like should we try to get through a lot of stuff and then you can give up at any point, eject out, and connect to this server?
That's what I usually do anyway.
Okay, let's.
And then just rewind as needed.
Sounds good.
I have one question. How do you get out of Postgres when you need to? Because
Oh,
I've been doing
yeah.
Control-C.
That's a fun. Yeah, it's \Q. So remember we did \DT to do special Postgres command show the tables.
Right.
It's \Q, and it took me I had to look that up many times before I started actually remembering it. It's kind of, it's tricky. You can't do control anything. It's not going to work.
All right. And now, I usually I don't close anything when I leave class.
Okay.
But when I come back, if I'm leaving this Wi-Fi and coming back to this Wi-Fi, should I be restarting Docker?
No, so you shouldn't need to restart anything that's running on your computer, no matter what network you connect or disconnect to,
Okay.
because localhost is a special network host, and it is connected to, or it maps to what's called the loopback address, which is like an IP address. It's a special IP address 127.0.0.1. You might have seen that, and it's the internal IP address of your own computer card. So it doesn't matter if your computer is connected to a network or it connects to a different network. Localhost should always connect to somewhere on your computer, regardless of whether it's online or not. Yeah.
Okay,
Now
so if I restart my computer, then what is it that I should do?
You have to do the long Docker command. Probably. I don't think it's going to restart that automatically. You have to do the long Docker command. You'll have to navigate to the folder where the server is, and you're going to have to run node or nodemon server.js to get the server running. And then to connect to Postgres, you're going to have to do the docker exec command. And if you want, I'll put together a guide tonight from, like, as long as you've been following along in class, like if you have a fresh computer startup, what to do to get up and running with everything.
That would be great.
Okay. Cool. So I have, this is running, this is working. I've added to the GitHub repository. Hey, what's
Hi, sorry.
Yeah.
Wallet. What am I doing? I just reopened this. What is happening?
So,
Where am I?
so you have some.
Yeah, that's the
edits.
comparison,
I would
right?
just undo just that little
This thing?
loop around. Yeah. So you
Yes, I
discard
do.
the changes. And then I don't know if there's changes here, but you can
Do that.
discard those too. Yeah.
Okay.
And then if you go to pull, so
Yeah,
everybody
I'm
should
gonna
go to VS Code.
I have one more question.
Yes, yes.
And if you could just remember to create the modules that you're gonna start putting stuff up, because I keep looking for it
Okay.
in Google Classroom.
Yep.
It's still not.
All right. I'll write a note on my reminders to ding me tonight or tomorrow morning and say, make the,
Because after a while, all that scrolling up and down, it's like, it's tedious, but
yeah.
like those headings in Google Classroom, makes it easier to look.
Okay.
I don't-
Okay. That will ding me tomorrow to say make the Google Classroom. And if I haven't done it by then, I will remember to do it. Okay. So as you can see, the local tunnel's up and running. You can hit receive. I've put a bunch of sample data. We'll go through and add this for everybody if you want it. These are a bunch of chat messages made of buzzwords. You can generate random buzzwords. Distributed 5th generation graphical user interface. That's a good one. And so on. They're all like fun buzzwords. Anyway. Okay, so yeah, so let's go to VS Code, bring up the sandbox, go to the GitHub section, and then where everyone should pull just to make sure you have the latest. There shouldn't be any conflicts because this stuff is all in a new folder. I've made a new folder inside the chat room app in here called sample data, and there's 2 files. You notice they end with .sql. You don't really have to name them anything with anything particular to run them, but it will recognize and syntax highlight your SQL commands. So it's very nice if you're going to actually write commands anywhere. It's good to name it a file like .sql like that, and then an editor like this will try to help you out. It'll color the keywords. But notice how it also colors like name, because name must be a special word somehow. And this is why you don't want to use like timestamp or some things. But too bad, we're using them. And
I also got a pop-up that says inside of VS Code that says the MS SQL extension is recommended for this file type, and it's asking me, well, there's 2 buttons. One says install, the other one says show recommendation.
I would just close it. Oh, I mean, you could install it if you want. I don't know if I have that. I would just close it. Do you see different colors in the editor?
I do.
Okay. I would just close it. That's Microsoft trying to get you hooked on their product using a advertising channel, which they've earned through this free software of this VS Code. Yeah.
Did anybody else get that?
I probably got it, a long time ago. Okay, so these files, we're not going to edit these files or anything, but they're just here so everyone can get them. What we actually should do is, rather than go through all this terminal stuff, does everyone want a little break from the terminal for a couple minutes?
Sure.
Okay, we'll go to,
Can I ask one question though?
Yeah.
When I go to the app,
yeah,
I just get a long list of undefined, like a whole,
yeah, so
many undefined.
so you're connecting to the local tunnel, you're connecting to
Oh.
my server. I have 1,000 messages. And if you remember from yesterday, we've altered the format. We're actually writing and reading from the database now, and the format of the
Oh,
messages is
okay.
different.
Okay,
So that front end app, it has not been updated.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
I did not get to that last night. So I'll send a message once that front end is actually working correctly. But for today, I think everyone should just use Postman, and we're just going to look at the data.
gotcha.
Okay, so the terminal or no terminal. Let's do no terminal. Let's go to Finder and drag and drop some files because this is nice. So if you go to, can everyone find the careers and code folder? Actually, never mind. What if we hold Control and click on sample data? You get this menu, everyone?
Mhm.
Okay, so if you do reveal in Finder, that will give you a Finder, and it will jump right to that folder that we're clicking on here. So this is a good way to find the actual where the files are on your actual computer. Does everyone see this home icon and their username on this bar on the side?
Or on the side, you mean in the Visual Studio?
No, so there's a
Wait.
sidebar here,
Oh,
and I
Oh.
see my folder. Oops,
No,
no.
I don't think so.
Okay, let's do this
yeah, I do.
maybe in the terminal. If you
It's not,
see,
it's not, I don't think it's default.
we'll do this both ways. If you see it, follow along right now, but if not, we'll do it the terminal way in a second.
So sample data is the folder.
It's the folder, yeah.
And just pull up your own EVC, for example.
No,
I'm
So
sorry.
we're gonna take the two files that are in this
Gotcha.
folder, and we're gonna highlight one, and then press Command, and click on the other. So click on one, press Command, click on the other. They should both be highlighted like this.
Yeah.
And then you got to be ready to hold down the mouse button for a little bit because we're going to drag through a bunch of folders. So drag them over to, well, you click them and drag them over to your home folder. Wait a bit. Keep dragging. Go to Docker. Let that open. Go to this. That'll open. Go to Postgres. That'll open. And then either drop them here or, drop them right here in Postgres. So there's a bunch of folders here. And we're going to, let's do this in the command line because it turns out it's actually not that hard to do. Does everyone have a terminal open in VS Code? And you're in the Careers in Code Sandbox folder? Okay. So we need to do a command called copy with the terminal. So we're going to do CP, that stands for copy. Hey, get in VS Code and
Can't, my computer's stuck on a screen. I have to wait.
it's frozen, hey?
But it just won't let me leave this.
Right.
Okay.
You can do Command Tab to bring up this switcher thing, and you can tab to everything that's on here. So, okay, so in VS Code, bring up the terminal. You should be in this folder. We're going to type CP Gus Cost, hit tab to complete it. There'll be a slash. Chat, hit tab, chat remap. Do sample data and then hit tab. You know, SAM is enough. And then star. And then you do a space. So we're going to copy everything in this folder. And the place we're going to copy it is $, all capitals home. Remember, this is similar to what we did with the setup of the Docker. Slash Docker. And when I hit tab, it just substituted in the whole long thing. Does anyone else see that happen?
Wait, after you said $home, what did you do?
I hit tab. Oh. Okay. So let's not do $home at all. Backspace, delete that part. Okay. Let's use the tilde, which is really the same thing. So tilde, everyone know how to get a tilde? It is shift and the key to the left of the one. A forward slash. It's important these are all forward slashes. And then Docker, you should be able to do do tab, lowercase do. And then V tab, that's volumes. And then P tab, that's Postgres.
Does it matter if mine is volume versus volumes?
It doesn't matter. The command,
Okay.
what you made a folder and linked it, as long as you use the same folder when you set up your Docker,
Okay.
it should, and I think it would have errored if the folder didn't exist. So
Okay.
this should be, we're looking for the folder that's shareable, that's accessible from inside our Docker.
Okay. I mean, that's what it prompted me, so that should be right.
So I hit tab to complete to Postgres, and that's all. So I'm going to hit enter. And that doesn't work. Okay. I'm going to hit up and enter, and I'm probably getting this wrong.
You have CP Gus Cost. Is that supposed to be there?
Yeah, CP is right.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe you can't do the star. So go back to here and get rid of the star and do just the slash, no star. Oh, and you're going to need to go, after you do that, get rid of the slash. I'm going to paste, let me paste the whole thing that actually works. You want to do a -R, which is recursive after the copy. Don't worry too much about, remembering any of that or knowing what it is. And I'm going to paste it right now. Karen's in Maine. Okay, so you should be able to copy this and run this from your terminal, from your Careers and Code Sandbox folder. Eva, you'll probably have to change it to volume singular, right?
Oh, yeah.
But does everyone get when you do that, does it not print an error? Does it just?
Just give me the prompt again.
Yeah, okay, so that's good.
Is it volume / the name of the Postgres database?
No, it's just volume / Postgres. It's
No such file like that.
Maybe you did volumes.
Oh, sorry, you got here. Okay, you got to pull from GitHub first,
Right.
because this is new files.
For the sample data? I did pull. And
Okay.
I thought
Are you in your folder?
Yeah,
or
what
just-
folder are you in?
I'm in yours,
Sandbox.
Gus. I'm in
Okay.
Gus.
So you probably don't need the, this or this, because we were doing this from the root, the careers and the container, the whole project folder, the sandbox.
Oh, okay.
So if you delete that first, yeah, okay, it should work from here. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Does everyone have that? Anyone not have that? Got it, Anna?
Honestly,
Let's do it.
I'm not following.
Okay, so go to VS Code, and you need to go to return. Okay, and then you have, so go to GitHub, you have the latest info. Okay, so it looks like you do. So go to the Slack and copy that command right into that. So just that part. Oh, yeah. Okay, so it says there's no PWD. Maybe, so, do you have we might need to set this, because it looks like you're not pulling you don't have the latest from GitHub. You might have to re-download it or reset up. Can you go over here? And, can you, do you want to keep these changes? Don't go to, you can discard or stash the changes if you want them later, or just discard. And if you go to there and do pull. Why is it not, if you go back to the files, why is it not? Why don't you have that new folder? Can you re-download the whole let me know if it doesn't, if it prints that error again, that it can't find the folder. But yeah, it's, I don't know why it wouldn't. Okay. Just make sure that, oh, I like drag these out. Who else dragged them and dropped them and all that?
Where are we trying to get them to go? I'm like confused about what we're ultimately trying to do, because I dragged the files into
We're
my
trying to-
sandbox folder.
We're trying to get them to go into this folder, your home folder / Docker / volume or volumes / Postgres. And we're trying to just put those files there.
So message SQL and users SQL, you want to end up in that Postgres folder. Do you want us to keep copy and sample data, or are we just completely?
I mean,
moving it?
you can, if you do the CP command, it will leave a copy there. That if you do a command called MV, it will not, it will move them. But
Okay, I was referring to you doing the action of the dragging.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
you
so
could,
we can do it either way. We can drag and drop, or we can just do the CP internal.
right. But I think you're right that it will delete them from the original location. So you might have to undo those changes
Okay.
if you end up with deleted files, or, you know, as long as everyone gets them into their computer, we only need them
You can
once.
highlight them and then Command C and then
Yeah,
paste them.
Yeah, that's, I was.
So does this
referring
mean
to-
they're
to
in my
what you-
Postgres?
whether or
Because
not
I didn't
you
get
want
an
us to
error.
actually
Not yet.
run
They're
Oh,
in that
okay.
folder that your Docker can see. But we have to move them, we have to import them into
No,
your
no, no,
data.
I didn't mean it like that. I just meant like you could.
No, I'm just.
I try
saying
not to
that's like-
Yeah.
Makes it sound a lot
No, I didn't mean.
I
it like
usually,
that.
I often just say, you know, someday I'll understand this. It's just not today.
Try cloning.
And I feel like I'm particularly dense today.
Yeah.
Hey,
But go see.
I'm sorry.
Huh?
Yeah.
No, I'm just like.
You might have, I'm not like.
You know, that's. Technology, well, used to be a technology instructor, I could do that stuff.
So I would now get.
Most interesting, I should be doing something.
this beer.
Now
Yeah,
for a CP space.
rough day at work.
Which you can do is if you found that Postgres folder.
You have to go to home. So
Where's home?
if
Hold
you
on.
look in your sidebar, all the way in your sidebar, it should say your username.
Okay, there's my username.
Go into the folder that has
There's actually,
sandbox.
oh, there it is.
Kind of
Now,
a Docker folder.
I
Master,
found it.
Yep.
because this one will let you fetch the latest.
What are we,
It's not a default,
As they come in,
sidebar
without having to
icon.
download from the site every
So
time.
the way
all
you
have
could
to
have
do is go
added
to
it
here
into
and
your
click
Finder
pull. You should
sidebar
get
if you
it. So
wanted
go into
to,
that.
it wasn't already there.
Actually,
You would just go to preferences for Finder and then you could add it.
Add what? What are you talking
Let
about?
me see.
Because I'm already inside the Docker.
No, I know. I'm gonna show you, because it wasn't in mine. I first had to add it.
You're talking about adding home to.
Yeah, so if you go to
so
Preference
this
Finder,
is, we drag that out to.
You go to preferences?
to next to, like, in there.
sidebar,
And then.
oh, you're right there. Just click on this little thing, check it, and then it'll add it right there. So it'll-
Oh, okay.
yeah, just makes it
Okay, so
easier.
instead of-
All right, so when he says home, that's what he
That's
means.
what- yeah,
The one with my name on it.
Yep.
Okay.
Could you come show me whatever
Yeah,
you just showed me
Yeah,
that I didn't understand either?
it's just a preference that's not a default. Open up a Finder. Yep.
Yeah.
Sidebar.
Yep.
And then. Home.
Oh.
And then it'll add it to this.
Oh,
right here.
okay,
So you
great.
can access it better.
Thank
Yep. Now we get. That's a math thing, that's not a computer thing.
Yeah, when it comes to those little tricks like that with the math,
Yeah.
And if you go
I've
to
had
GitHub,
my actual, like my first one, I have had like
if
5
I
years.
put new changes in, you should get the
I'm
latest.
only 2 years into being a Mac person, and only because I'm being forced into it. Only because
So
I'm being.
instead of doing the git clone, you're downloading the file onto your computer and then putting it in a folder.
Yeah.
I
without
find
doing
myself
git
getting
clone.
like,
The wrong key.
Because
Yeah.
all that does
Because
is
now I'm
download
using
files, it
RAM.
doesn't give you
Yeah.
all
See.
of the
like at
hidden
work,
files
everything, like,
that
Like
are
all
needed
this
to
shit.
yeah,
Yep.
and then like
get
Windows
push,
PC,
get pull, get
and
clone, all
then,
of the git commands.
Go through
And
the
we're
same
using
thing
the
that
git
yeah,
commands so
command
that I
versus
can basically
control.
make changes and then everybody can get
I
the
was thinking
changes
about
very easily.
getting like a piece of, like
So,
just something
yeah,
with a little bit of feedback, and instead of having command looking at, I'm just making it control. Just creating like my own little.
Open folder, open server, and then open the terminal again, paste that thing one more time.
Docker volumes Postgres. I don't see it there.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, got it. All right. So if you do Docker PS, you have the Docker thing running. Cool. All right. So everyone, now we have the files. Supposedly they will be in our Dockers, and we're gonna do Docker PS. We're gonna find that container ID. If you remember from yesterday, everyone should have a different container ID. So you want to copy that. And then to get into our Docker, we're going to do Docker exec -it, paste the container ID, and then we're going to do /bin/bash. Like that. And I'm going to add this one to the running log of today's commands. This one I have to put a substitute, like container ID. Now you don't do the curly braces. That's just sort of a way to show that it's something you should substitute in. Okay, so run that. You should get a prompt like this: root at some ID. Everyone got this? Anna.
I'm a little behind.
Okay, that's fine. I want to at least get everyone to load the data because we should be able to do some fun SQL commands. Okay, so do Docker exec echo Charlie dash, sorry, space dash India Tango. Sorry, I'm doing NATO alphabet. I just mean IT. Sorry. I should have go back. So never mind. Dash IT space. And then you want to get that value, copy that from there. See that long like numbers and letters? That's your container ID. So copy that and then paste it. And then another space. And you want to do /. No, this character slash. This one. Bin, bin, / another /, just the slash right there. And then bash. Oh, that's an X. ES. No, you can, okay. No, go up twice. Okay. Do this, hold the option, and you can jump. And then just delete that one character and replace it with the X. And then no matter where you are in line, you can hit enter again. So now you're in the dark. Yes.
I'm not in the dark.
Not in the dark.
Nothing happens when I type darker PS.
Oh, you have no container. So you need to find that long, remember that big long command.
Yeah,
You need to run that one again.
okay.
Um,
If I do that and then do darker PS, should it show up?
It should show up, and then you should be able to get the,
Yeah, I think.
but holler if it doesn't happen. I want to get everyone to at least a little bit through this today, and then you good? And then, some of the stuff, you don't have to follow along with all of the server changes, but to demonstrate some of the queries we're going to do, I want to load some of this sample data. So that's what we're doing now. So we're in a Docker, and we have a program called PSQL. And if you remember, that is what we were using to open up a Postgres shell and type Postgres commands, select stuff, insert stuff. We're going to use this, but we're not going to do it interactively this time because we just want to load some data. So we're going to do PSQL.
Does not exist.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's going to be a long command. So I'm going to there's several more things, and I'll tell you when to hit enter. It's going to be a fun. And if anyone wants the NATO alphabet, I'm pretty good at that, and I like showing off. So I can do Papa, Sierra, Quebec, Lima, if you prefer that.
That
That's
would
a
make
nice-
things much more interesting.
That's an actual thing. You're not just saying like,
Look up the
Keywords.
aviation alphabet. It's a way to be
Oh.
able to say stuff over the phone, and you can spell out something, and everybody should be able to tell which letters you're doing, because it's really hard to mistake one word for another.
Mm.
And-
So it has a first responder, if you work in any type of emergency service.
Yeah, of course. Anything where you talk on the phone, airplanes,
I know we're
that's
doing
the,
that.
yeah. Anyway, and the cool thing about it is almost everyone can just understand it right off the bat. You don't have to learn it to be able to hear it, which is pretty cool. Okay, PSQL space dash uppercase U.
But why are you using it now?
We're using it now because we're just going to, so these files that I've added.
No. I'm talking about, I'm a little behind, but I was talking about the alphabet thing.
Oh, because like if I'm saying something and I'm mumbling, or it's hard to, if you don't know what
you
the
just
words
use
I'm
it-
saying are,
You just use it in general, or did you have a project involving it?
I just decided to learn it because it's a handy thing to know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I always just,
don't care.
A is in Alice, B is in Bob.
Yeah, you can do that, but
Yeah.
that takes like
Yeah,
3
think about
times
it.
as long. I
Yeah, I'm
think.
sure it does.
Yeah.
Anyway, never mind.
I kind of forgot. What is U? Dana, do you know what U is?
Oh, right there, that you just told me?
No,
No,
the-
the,
Oh, you.
He's on
Um,
tangent.
No.
Uncle
uniform.
would be good.
I think in the original, or there was an older one, and then there's like many generations of it.
It's unicorn?
Unicorn.
Uniform.
Oh, look at but even still, it starts with a U. You can never
Okay.
take it.
Okay, so dash capital uniform, and then a space, and then we're gonna say Postgres, which is Papa Oscar Sierra Tango Golf Romeo Echo Sierra.
Okay.
Now I'm just showing off, right? Okay, so that is the user. We have to do this every time. It's a little bit annoying, but I don't want to bother changing it at this point.
And why are we typing this so that we can get into the Postgres shell?
We're not getting into the Postgres shell this time. We're doing the same command. If we were getting into the Postgres shell, we would press enter right now. So if you
Okay.
pressed enter now, you're in the Postgres shell. You want to get out of it. So you want to do \Q. to get out of it right
Oh,
now.
we're getting out of it.
Well, no, if you see what is on here, then you're all good. Don't press, but don't press enter yet.
No,
This
I
is,
haven't,
okay,
I haven't.
Or at least those of us who were speaking.
Man, we're all a little slow today, guys, sorry.
yeah.
Okay, but if we did stop here, we would use the Postgres.
If you stopped and you pressed enter here, yes, you would start the Postgres shell.
So where are you at?
Well, instead of having us type into the Postgres shell, we have some files, these files which I made, which just have a whole bunch of the same kinds of commands we were doing yesterday. And we want to just say, okay, we've saved a bunch of commands in this file, and we want to give that file to the Postgres program to run instead of us typing everything. So the way you do that in Linux and shell scripting is you're going to use the less than character, which sort of is like an arrow saying like the thing on the right goes into the thing on the left. So, and you can do this with all kinds of programs. You can, anything shell program, you can actually open a thing on the right, and it's always actually a file or a file descriptor on the right, goes into, piped into something on the left. So you do the less than character and then a space, and now we're going to do /. And we need to find that folder that we linked together. Now remember, we're inside the Docker, and you don't have to remember, like this is, I know this is vastly complicated. So, you know, but we're inside the Docker. You need to find the folder that we linked together before. So you're going to do /var, hit tab to get another slash. And then the next folder is lib, lib, Lima, India, Bravo. And then tab. And then the next folder is Postgres. So you can just do PO tab. Now you're in this folder. Now, if you did everything right up until now, if you type users and then tab, you should get a users.sql, but I did not do it right.
Varlib Postgres QL.
Oh, no, yeah, that's wrong, right? No, it is. Oh, sorry. There's one more folder. It's not yet. It's not yet. So varlib PostgreSQL / and then you do data.
Oh,
And
yeah,
then
got
you
it.
try to do
No, just one.
just, yeah.
Should not read
not
from
read
input
from
file.
input
It's a directory.
Okay, yes. So
I thought
hit
mine
up.
was-
So do user, type user at the end,
Of this?
and then hit tab.
Data then users.
You got it. So your file, see, it found your file. It knows that your file is there. Everyone should see, if you hit tab, you should see it print out users.
Error column email. Bunch of errors.
Oh, that's fun.
Put in there.
Okay. Oh, boy. Okay. We're going to have an error the first time we do this, but we're going to go back and fix it real quick, and then you can hit up and you'll get the whole thing. So if you want to hit enter, as the cure pointed out, everything errors. And that's because we still have the user and the messages
Yeah,
table
same thing I got.
in our database.
You got errors.
So we need to do
Directory.
PSQL -U Postgres, just that first part again. We're going to hit enter. This is going to put us into Postgres shell, right? So we have, so hit enter, or you already hit enter, so you can do down. Just do the first part, PSQL -U Postgres.
Okay.
If you delete SQL, yeah, and hit tab. Okay, so your file did not to that same place. Let's set the break. Let's get this working, and it'll only take about 5 minutes. But help around too if you want. Okay. Yeah. So it could be that the linked file in the Docker isn't in the same place. So there's a Thank you. Okay. So everyone's got the Postgres shell. We're going to do drop table users and a semicolon like this. Oh, can't do that yet. It says, well, there's still messages that refer to users.
Oh.
And if you dropped users, you would lose those foreign keys. It's enforcing so carefully that there's a key on each message that points to an actual user. You can't get rid of the users yet because it knows that every message, if you have messages in your table, they all have to point to a user, and so you have to keep users. It won't let you. We have to drop messages first. So drop table messages. And then drop table users. You should see 2 drop tables. And then once you see both of, see that?
No. What the? Oh, I think
Are you
I didn't put the thing.
semicolons?
Yeah.
Yes,
It
cool.
works after.
Yeah, okay, cool. So
Oh,
you do
then go up.
/Q to quit out of Postgres. Backslash is
No errors.
this one.
But were we supposed to do something else after we dropped messages and dropped users?
No, you can just quit the shell for now, because we're gonna go back and retry our import command, the longer one that we typed out before, which you said works.
Did you get a bunch of inserts?
Yep, your insert 01.
Backslash.
I tried that.
Backslash.
Users.sql,
No.
that one, the one at the
The
end.
one above the
Users.sql.
return key is backslash.
Yeah. Postgres and the Karen, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right, so
Yeah.
I'm out now. So now we're back at the root.
Right, so if you hit the up arrow twice at the root,
Oh,
you
for
should see the
volumes,
long
yeah,
command
volumes, wait, let me see.
with the less than sign in
No,
it.
that's not in here.
I didn't finish typing. So we're
Oh.
going to- Can you copy and paste that?
Yeah, yeah.
Clear your line, hit LS. Okay, turn CD to rlib. PostgreSQL data.
Wait, where am I?
Sorry, everything up until users.sql there.
Everything up until,
Yeah, so starting with /var.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that should work. It should print out a whole lot of inserts.
No semicolon.
And type LS.
Good.
Hit CD space.
What?
dot, dot.
Yes,
The
it's in the,
long command in Slack I'm looking for.
this, yes, it's in the same, sorry, I'll post it again. I've been adding to the same big, long code file. It's the last line in there.
Oh.
Not just LS?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
Can we go to Finder?
Okay,
So
Oh, wow.
we got to go to your home
Gave me a
directory
bunch
and then
of
the Docker folder.
insert 01.
but no errors.
No errors.
That's good.
So here's
Okay.
the folder.
So we have one more import to do. There was 2 files that we copied. So you want to hit up and then backspace all the way back to the get rid of users and type messages and hit tab. You should also see .sql here too.
Sweet.
And you hit enter and that's going to insert the same way, work exactly the same. Yeah.
There it is.
That was fun
So
to watch.
this one.
So you can do this in a batch. I pulled this actually from a website that just generates fake data for you. It's
Okay.
actually,
What
it's
is the
actually,
site?
let me find,
I might
what
need
is
that.
it?
Right click on
What's,
this,
what's a
Sample
batch?
copy.
fake data.
Go
Macaru,
to
this
look on
thing.
Aviva.
So a batch would be like, instead of printing 1,000 inserts, instead of saying insert these values, insert these values,
That's not
doing
the right
one
one.
row at a time, you can say in Postgres, you
So
can
go
say
back to-
insert,
Nope, there
you know,
it is.
for
Either
these columns,
grab
the
up
values,
your home folder
and
there,
then just
grab the
do
files.
this, and put just
How
the
do you
values in
visualize
parentheses
graph?
over and
Graph,
over and
okay,
over and
cool.
over,
Glad I
and
didn't
it'll
write
do it in
Okay.
one, you'll see it insert one
Okay, then
time,
Docker.
but it'll say
Then,
insert 1,000 or something
Oh,
like
I
that.
have volume
So
and
that's
volume.
a
Not sure
batch
which one.
insert
Neither one
statement.
has.
Yeah, this is a cool tool
They
for,
both have Postgres.
I'm gonna put
Okay,
this
we're
in the
good. This one.
resources.
That could
for
be the right
mock
one. Though.
data.
I think.
You can,
It's okay, it's fine.
I think they're
you
the
can-
same thing.
you
right?
can
No.
pick which fields you want
Because
in
that's
your
what you
data,
called it. I probably
and then
made
you can put the type of every field, and it's gonna generate something that is of that type.
So he dropped his into his volumes
Yeah, that's
Postgres.
what I was like,
data.
that's, I was just about to copy it, I was about to paste it in, and then you posted the thing, and you beat me
Too
to it.
slow.
I was talking.
Yeah, I respect
Okay, okay, so we have our
Shocker.
mock data, and
that. Open
this
volume.
means if we do,
Okay,
if we're back
Oh,
in
that's where I
here,
put
we
it.
can do again
interesting.
PSQL
Here, can I see your?
dash capital U
Sorry.
Postgres.
Let's see, so if we do Docker.
And then we're in the Postgres
Yes.
shell again. And we're gonna stay in the Postgres shell for pretty much the whole rest of the day. But we can do select count star in parentheses from messages.
Sorry.
And that's gonna print out 1,000 because we've just imported 1,000 fake messages. And everyone should see 1,000. If you see 0, that's not good. If you see 2, that's not good either. Very good.
You don't want
Okay. I think Ellis will get them caught up. Let's go into
So it
our
should be there. That makes it feel
subject, our
better.
lecture today
does.
for a little bit.
Immeasurably
And then
so.
I think we'll break after this stuff. Okay, so let's do more SQL. This is the last day of SQL, so, you know, hooray. But we're going to go into how to avoid you doing all this stuff next week. But we're still going to do it for one more day. There's a lot more stuff. It's pretty cool. Again, this could be your whole career. If you are interested in this, if you like it, there's a, you know, this is enough. It's a huge enough discipline where you can do this for your whole life.
Oh, it's not here, sorry.
Okay, let's summarize the features that are in SQL and do some demos of them. Okay, so this is what I was talking about yesterday. People use these terms. You know, when you start getting into enterprise-y software and data software, people have a whole lot of acronyms. It's like the army. Like you have a million acronyms for things because nobody wants to say data definition language all the time. But they do want to refer to this abstraction of like that doesn't really mean much except for like these are certain kinds of commands, these are certain kinds of commands. So I've put one on each page. The first one is DDL, data definition language. This is the commands.
Yep.
As I said yesterday, these commands are
Yep,
for
they're in the right folder.
working with the shape of your data.
Did you do
So
the two
defining
drop
new
filters?
tables,
Yes.
Okay,
describing
so now you
how
can
the
do
tables
the,
are linked one
that
to
long
another,
Command with those.
and
Let's see.
deleting, removing tables. And then there's also this truncate, which is actually leave a table in place, but really quickly empty every row out of it. So get rid of every row. So these are all
There we go.
really, I would call this last one more of a data manipulation
Messages too.
thing, but you know, it's officially,
same thing,
or
but
at
with
least the
messages.
website I copied it from, it's DDL, so whatever. DML is data manipulation. So does everyone understand DDL? We did this just now or yesterday to make the tables with the right columns.
Yeah,
Um,
defining the data, right?
we-
You're setting-
You're defining what the data looks like, not what it is, not what the values are, but like the shapes and the relationships within the data. Data manipulation is working with the values and manipulating, selecting, retrieving, writing new data, changing rows in a table, removing the rows. And then there's also a thing called explain. In Postgres, you can do explain or explain analyze, and it's actually going to convert your declarative command to a bunch of steps. And this is a little hard to read, and it's more of an advanced technique. But if you're trying to optimize like how your data is structured and which indexes you might need so that it can be looked up faster or something like that, you can ask Postgres, please explain how you would go and fetch this data, and then it'll print out all these steps for like how it's going to scan through the data. But the other ones, these are the basic ones that you'll see a lot of: select, insert, update, delete. They match very closely with what API operations: create, read, update, delete. You'll run into those. But these are all for basically manipulating rows and data and columns, data within those rows in the database. Okay, the third kind is data control language. There's a DCL. This is really just like giving permissions to different Postgres users to use this data, and you can give people read-only permissions or whatever on the data. Just be careful, because this does not mean users of your website. This doesn't mean users of your capstone project's website. If you have a user table, these are database users. So these are people who can actually do PSQL and do all that stuff we've been doing. Often there's only one or two, and it's like, it's just the database user. In some contexts where there's like a big internal database or a database that like a mainframe app connects directly to, sometimes, authorization and all of that is written right into the database. And that's sort of some people, there's a faction of people who are like, you should do that. That's a good idea. But most of the time you'll see web services and whatever, they're not actual database users. They're just data in the database, and database users can work with that data. So that's important. The last kind of thing, kind of commands you have are transaction control. So we haven't really seen transactions, and I don't think we're going to really go into, what exactly they are, or like what, like all the details of like what you would do with transactions. These will probably be handled by settings that you configure in our Express app. We'll configure, how to tell the database to use transactions so that everything is basically safe. And a transaction has the same, sense that you have for like a bank transaction. And I think that's where it really originally comes from. It's a transaction is basically saying to the database, I want to do some number of things all together as one. I want to make some changes to the data, but all of these changes should be grouped together in what's called a transaction. And if there's any problem with any of them, or we want to cancel or not actually go all the way to the end, it should do none of them. So it should be all of them or none of them. And this is like the example is, if you had a database, which is like everybody's bank account, and the bank is like, here's how much money you have, they store that as data in a database. And if I said, well, I want to transfer $5 to someone else, the bank is going to say, well, what is it going to do? It's going to say subtract $5 from me, add $5 to someone else. But if it did one of those and then the database crashed and it never finished that, it would be like destroying money, right? Or if it did it in the reverse order, it would be creating money out of thin air. And the database then, or the bank would then have a lot of trouble when it got audited or whatever.
Sounds like a good way to hack the thing.
Sure, right. But they're gonna, I'm pretty much guarantee you, any bank that is doing an electronic fund transfer, or Venmo or Square or whatever these apps are that do that, they're going to put the whole thing in something like a transaction, maybe not literally a database transaction, but this is a way to do it. This is a way to say, you know, alter one value, alter another value, maybe delete some values. You can do whatever you want, commands in there. But if you roll back, it's going to not do any of that. And if you commit, it's guaranteeing that it will be able to do all of that. So that's, and then there's a save point you can actually put in the middle of a transaction, make a save point and only roll back to a save point. And they can get very complicated, but I've never actually seen that. Okay. So for a while now, we're going to talk about the select statement. So we remember we have select, insert, update, delete. Those are sort of the basic operations on the data itself. Select is really the big one. Select is the one that gets very fancy because you can do all kinds of stuff. Once you have the data written in the database, you can do all kinds of stuff for like manipulating what shape it displays in, which columns you actually want to look at. And you can even do like functions and little computations with that value and then return the results of those computations, not just the actual data itself. So there's a whole lot of parts to a select statement, and they're called clauses. This is a, you know, if you want to go through the Postgres documentation, it's very good documentation and it's very comprehensive. The page on selects, and I have a link to it in a bit, is very long and it has a whole lot of details. It'll take you a long time to read that. But if you're very interested in all of the details, there's much more than we have here. There's the first thing is every select statement has a from, what's called a from clause, because you have to say where are we getting the data? Like where, you know, it has to come from somewhere. That could be the name of a table. We do select star from users and we get all the users. It could actually be another select. So you can select something and then select from that outside of it and then select it again. You can do that many times and it's sort of backwards because you're preparing some intermediate form of data and then selecting from that. But you know, often you'll just see selecting from a table. There's a where clause, which is, okay, well, now you know what data you're getting. What data should you get from that source? So like, this is sort of a true false check. This is like an if statement. If whatever you pass this is true, then it will include that data. And if it's false, it will not include the data. And you can chain them together. You can do all kinds of more where. You can say where this and this or this, and you can put parentheses on it. And it's the words and or, but it works the same way as all of that and or Boolean stuff that JavaScript has, where you can combine, you know, different conditions in different ways. There is a group by, which is basically like if you say, I want to select some data and I want to, you know, I don't want to see every single row in this data. We've added some columns to this user test data. One of them is state, like the state of residence. And you could say, well, I just want to select all of the different states that are found in this database, but I don't want 100 copies of New York and 100 copies of California. I just want to see the unique values. So you would group by that column, and then it's going to lump together everything that matches in that column. It doesn't have to be just the value of a column, though. It could be, you know, the first letter. There's a way to say group by the first letter in the state and only return the first letter of state. You can manipulate in the middle of all of this too. And then order by, it's pretty much happens after everything else almost, but it's like, how do we sort, which is first, and you can give that, again, the name of a column and it'll order it alphabetically or numerically or whatever, or you can order it by an expression. You could say order by, I don't know, the something or other, the hash of this or this, or, order by the, order the states by size. But you'd need a function that would give you the size for each state, or something like that, Okay, so those are some clauses that work with select. And I think maybe rather than just plowing on, let's try a couple of these with our new data. So let's go back to VS Code. We're in our Postgres terminal. So if we say select star from users, well, you can hit enter, you can hold down enter, and it's going to be printing out a whole lot of data because there's 1,000 users. They all have fake names and fake emails. They all have a state of residence and a birthday. And actually, I'm going to collapse this, or at least make this a little bit, yeah. Man, that's really frustrating that it's like not wide enough. That's barely wide enough. Can everyone see that? Okay. So if you make your terminal wide enough, you'll see a nice table, but that's getting annoying. I'm going to try Control-C. Hey, it works. But you only get back to Postgres, right? You can't quit Postgres. But
So
That's handy though.
that's.
yes, that is.
No, so you're on like the bash prompt.
Okay.
So you gotta do PGSQL-U Postgres.
So does that make sense? We've just basically said, select everything from this table, and that's what that does. Yeah.
Interesting. Oh, it, semicolon, sorry.
Do we need to pause for anything else?
1 second.
Yeah.
What was that?
PGSQL.
Okay. He's got a handle.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, PGSQL.
Okay.
Okay, that's it.
No, space,
So
dash caps leave.
we can do
Dash.
add a where to this. Select
Oh, that one.
star from users where
Postgres,
state
all lowercase.
equals single quote
There you go.
And
and
it says
why.
command.
It's just finished PSQL. PSQL.
Yes.
Dash
well.
capital.
I was trying to remember the NATO alphabet, it failed me. Nice.
There we go.
Okay, so if you do here, select star from users where state equals and then NY in quotes, and then you need a semicolon, but it printed it back here for some reason. Then you should see a whole bunch of users again, and you can hold down the enter key. But if you notice in this third column, every one of them has NY as the state.
I think you just do select star again?
Yes.
Yep.
So I
Select
select star
from
from users
Is it-
where
Oh, where? Okay.
state equals NY. And
Single quotes.
single quotes and then a semicolon, and it's on the back to the beginning of the line. That's great.
Oh,
No. Yeah, just back out. Then put a semicolon in.
Yeah, when you're inside of the quotes,
Right.
it's case sensitive.
Yes.
There you go.
Can you, so select star from users table. That's right. I'm not typing it, but
Right.
users is the table
Users is the table.
where state is the column.
State is the column. Yes.
Okay.
And the equals, so the one thing it's weird here about Postgres and SQL is we're comparing. If this was JavaScript, this would be a triple or double equals.
Oh, it has
But
to have,
it's a single, and it has to, yeah, it has to have
Quotation, okay.
single, and they have to be single quotes too.
okay.
Did you
I
say
wasn't
double quotes are
wondering.
a special thing in Postgres?
Double quotes are like the names of tables or something. You really should never have to use them.
Oh, I
Or
didn't
rarely.
know
you know.
users again.
So is everyone seeing that? You
Always
get
gotta
some
remember your
rows
second
with
one.
NY. all
But
with
in this
NY.
case,
Oh, there it is.
okay.
Okay, so let's try
You did it twice.
select star
So you have select
from
star,
users,
select star, select star.
order by, and the next one I'll capitalize correctly, but order by birthday semicolon. And we can see the oldest users are going to be first, 1930 and it's ordering by that column.
Where birthday,
Not where birthday, order by birthday.
select star from users.
Select star from users, order by birthday. And order by is order space by.
Again,
It's like,
Nope, so in this
what
one,
are we doing then?
sorting by birthday.
So select star from users.
Then order by, which says
From-
order
on the
space by.
same one.
Yep, on the same
Can we
one.
try one on our own?
Order.
yeah, I mean,
Yep.
as long as you're doing select, you can try pretty much
By
anything and it can
birthday.
crash and you're not gonna break the data because you're not doing a delete,
Yeah, I
an
remember.
insert, or an update. If you're working with the database, in general, like, be careful if it's real important data,
Okay,
because
so
you can do anything.
if you see
But
here,
if you're not
Mhm.
typing
equals means
delete,
it's new
insert,
for-
update,
then
you're not gonna
that's a
break
tilde
it,
or
You
just a
can,
single hyphen,
you
that
can
means it's
select
a
all day long,
continuation.
and all you're doing is gonna
Yeah.
So you
return,
just gotta put a semicolon
you're gonna be
on that line,
reading
so
some
just
data, you're not gonna be writing it,
There you go.
So that answer is yes.
Node and Smitty.
Um, Okay,
Okay, how am I doing now?
so let's
Oh, see how
So
the right
let's
order
try that one more time with the
small,
right
so
capitalization.
just the others
So
in this case.
select. And the right indentation and everything. I'm gonna do this proper. Select star file from users. I'm gonna hit enter right now. And I'm gonna do 2 spaces or 4 spaces, whichever one you prefer. And do order by birthday. And it works. But that's the right capitalization. Okay, we could do select star from users. Actually,
Can you make up one for us to do on our own?
make up one.
Yeah.
You mean
Test us out.
challenge you, yes.
I get it.
Oh, Karen, I don't see challenge.
Okay,
Everything keep up.
how about,
But here you have this.
how about everyone born,
bad.
can you do everyone born before 1950? Now that, we haven't even learned how to put
Yeah.
1950 in literally.
Nice
But
going there, Takira.
But the short version is you can put like a date in quotes.
You can put January 1st.
You can put a date in
1951,
quotes.
As
and
long
it-
as the date is less than that. right?
Right, but Postgres has to understand it as an actual date, not a string. But it's really good at doing that. So just try putting, a way of saying January 1st, whatever, as a string with the single quotes around it, and it might work.
So order by, no.
So you wanted,
Before?
you
I
want
want
what?
only the people
So
born
you- you
before
miss the stuff that
1950.
they did before
Only the
slavery.
people born
See that
before
word clause?
1950.
Yeah,
Where, which source of data? Okay, select star. Where,
Nope, where would become after your table. They do select star from your table, then where. And I put your criteria that you're searching for.
from
Or filtering
where?
out, I guess.
Is that capitalized where?
It
Doesn't matter.
doesn't matter. It's neater if you capitalize it.
From where,
I think. Let me double check.
born.
how many rows did you get?
Well, so we gotta put it in terms of the data we have.
Yeah.
So the name of the
I'm
column is
looking at all the
birthday.
years and they're all.
So we
less
do
than-
where birthday, right?
Okay,
Birthday less than?
You
Uh,
said
So,
1950?
1950.
January.
281.
There's 281.
I got.
I got 292.
Okay, so maybe we didn't do.
Well, let's find out who's right. So actually, here's a modification. Count the people and give me the exact number. Print out the exact number. Don't count the rows yourself.
Oh.
I want the number
But you didn't put your table name.
Oh.
born
from
before
where.
1950. Part 2. That's part 2. What?
Okay. What was the thing you want? They're
I want it to return the
before
number,
1950.
I want the number of people born before 1950, not all of their data. I just want one number.
Oh, wait.
That's part 2. That's hard.
No, sorry. You don't.
This is, I'm doing this.
So
That
what
is-
form should you put the date in, the same date, same
Not
form
it.
they're in, or just January 1st?
Where birthday is less than 19.
Yes.
So if it's
Well,
similar
so-
to access, then
So if I
if I want,
change
let's
mine
call
to
it
say
1951.
Yeah.
So like when they are-
And we did a count a little earlier, if you were paying careful attention. No, we did.
No,
a
I don't
count
have it.
Earlier today, I think. You need quotes around that date.
Ah.
Yeah.
It's not
Single
even
quotes. They
pointing
have to be single quotes.
And you got 290.
Yeah, so
And I got 281
Oh, no,
when
now
I
we
did
want
it.
to use the
So,
where.
okay, so we did it, we just, yeah, we're good.
Added a year.
Where is
So
it?
wait, hold on.
So
So now we gotta
you
figure out the
find,
next thing.
it's a total. Get all the data where this condition is true.
So I'm gonna type the answer
So
right
we're
now.
just gotta. gotta
No.
put the- like a line.
Don't
No,
you
to the
dare.
first one, to the first part. Just listen.
Oh,
All
okay.
right,
That's
Sorry, I
not
got so
important.
defensive.
got about
Yep,
15
that's
seconds there.
That's right.
Okay. There's count.
Yep, less than 90.
Oh, I'll do the first one. Select star from users where birthday less than quotes. Actually, oh man, that's bad. Select, all right, let's start this over. Select star from users. Enter space where birthday less than quote 1950 0101.
So that's before 19.
It's less than, so it's before. It's not less than or equal. You can do less than
Okay,
or
I did
equal.
51.
Okay. So that's that. What's the count? Anyone have the answer for the count? Okay, select. And this is how you do this. Count. This is probably what you've seen, Dana. Of star or count of ID, doesn't matter.
So you want to keep your less than sign outside.
From
quotes.
users where birthday less than 1950 1 1. 281.
Yay.
Okay, now,
Try putting 19.
Okay, wait a
what's the
minute.
number of people born from 1950 to 1970?
Yep, inside quotes.
That's the next.
220.
So see how like that.
Yeah.
Sorry, got on.
Year dash the date dash the month.
1950 to 1970.
There we go.
On or after 1950 and before 1970.
Oh,
Select count from here.
So there could be somebody born on January 1st, 1950.
Okay, but I like it. Like just the prompt. Like, why is this all?
what about,
State control C.
oh, okay, never mind.
Oh, there.
Okay.
You do command minus
No.
maybe once or twice.
What's wrong?
Now hit up.
Greater than or equal to.
That prints it much nicer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, kind of
You can
read
read
that,
that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Anyone have the answer for
Would it just be,
Ah.
generation U or whatever it was, generation W? Something.
you can't put that all on one line? Because that's what I did.
For some reason, mine is like wrapping it. Does it overwrite the stuff over here? You know, I'm gonna try restarting Postgres real quick, see if that,
Select count star from user.
yeah, okay. So if you restart Postgres, I get all the space I want now. That's good.
Where birthday is listed.
Hey, could you still scroll?
Join it
What
and-
was the one that you put in for the count? Just where birthday less than?
Count star from users where birthday less than.
Well, so you do one whatever you do, like,
Yeah, 281, okay.
Oh. Was he like that?
no, the word.
Are we looking for the list of users or just the count from user form between 50 and 70?
Okay,
Just
I think I got it.
Got it.
Select birthday and
So if they were born on January 1st, you'd miss them. But other than that, you got it.
well, I did less than an equal to or the equal and it didn't. Well, what's the syntax for that?
Greater than or equal. What do you mean?
got it.
I
Do
put
an equal.
I
Yeah.
put that.
Okay, do that. Hit enter. No, no, no.
1970
not
was the other
both.
date?
Well,
Only
not
the
both.
left.
of them?
Between
Same thing.
1950 and
Yeah, it doesn't matter in this case.
Oh,
It's not-
okay.
Why do you have,
How
when
many
you put
did you
where
get?
birthday, you said 1950 dash
How many did you get?
286?
Something that, me too.
I mean, that's how ISO.
I was racing and you
When you do
beat me to
No,
the
you-
syntax.
I think you beat me. Oh.
I didn't have the syntax.
Whether you're in Europe or America
Well,
or
yeah.
like,
Sorry.
different countries will order the.
Dog eat dog world.
day differently.
Oh, so that's.
But we
January,
but we figured it out.
This is
That's what
year,
matters.
month.
Yeah.
Year, month,
When
day.
the year is first, nobody's ever confused.
Gotcha.
It's a little awkward, but it's the best way to work with it, yeah.
So we have to be specific and do year, month, day. We couldn't just do. the
I
year.
think because Postgres is configured with, by standard, it's probably the America date format, you can do 1/1/1952. And I think it'll work the same.
Ooh.
So if we said 1/12, yeah, and 12/1, yeah, it's definitely got,
So you gotta do birthday after George.
month, year, day, yeah.
What was that?
So you gotta do birthday and less than equal.
But,
Or birthday.
I
or
Would just
greater
recommend,
than or equal
whenever
to.
you have dates as a string, this is the best way. That is the best way.
Okay. Year.
Year dash month
year
dash day.
Can't play that. Yeah, control C, if every time still clear itself out.
Okay.
All right, guys, it's gonna be 286. Okay.
286.
There you go.
Select, count, star,
Okay, how?
from
what's users? And then
users,
just do another thing.
where.
Oops, you forgot to press enter.
I don't know what that.
I
Oh,
Add
Where
semicolon.
birthday
Hey, does he have a double
I got
quote?
it.
It is
Okay.
greater than or equal
Yeah,
to
double quote on the
Equal.
end.
Oh, yeah.
single quote 1950 0101 and birthday is less than 1970 0101.
Okay, here's the next one. Count the users from each state and print the state name and the number of users in that state.
Count. Can you say it again?
Count up the users that are in each state and print just the state code and then the number of users that are in that have that state. So just state and number of users, state and number of users.
For each state?
For each state, not for each user. Yes. That should be a clue for each state. And I will bring back up the clauses here. How do I get rid of this thing?
Did you put the, that's not right. Okay, so this was wrong too. then.
Oh, shit.
You have to put 0101.
Yeah, dashes.
I got part of it. All only 48 states in your state.
Luck, I don't know.
Not counting
I forgot a couple.
I didn't really look at the data very carefully. I just sort of generated
I'm
it.
just kidding. That's fine.
Yeah,
I got half of it.
Yeah, I'm guessing you got the half.
Max had that.
All the
problem.
numbers
Gus
for
had the
every
problem.
state,
Gus,
no state name.
when you said you
Yeah.
quit Postgres, did you just close out of the prompt and then log back in, or?
Yes.
What did he want? What does he want?
Right? The number of people who live in each state will only show the state name and the number of people
And the number of people?
in each state.
Or did you get the data?
Okay.
Cool. Okay, so now you're in Postgres, yeah. You should have the full size.
Yeah, thanks. Yes.
That's not right.
So, anyone have the
Well, I mean,
answers?
you changed the one. per
Don't
se.
do it yet. Hold on.
The other- the other
No,
one.
I
Halfway there.
No.
Oh,
I had that. I was just erasing it.
Oh,
1970. Because it says that there's a problem with that.
oh, you got your. You want to do
There's a
greater
clue
than
up on the, I mean, the
Okay.
screen has everything you need.
We just put that.
Which color is it?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that works, so just look at it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that counts. State for native.
Okay. How many people were there from 50 to 70?
that's.
1950 to 1970? Do you remember?
Did your logic change?
280.
Oh, I got many more.
Yeah, I do change it.
Oh, okay.
281 and then 286 for the second.
No, I screwed it up. I know why. Never mind. That's not- What's the thing we're doing?
Something complicated, I can't remember. You have to show
That did the same thing.
states.
I was like, just try to read one and select two ones for me, but.
Just wait till the Slack version comes out.
I'm destructive operation.
Select.
You have to delete, insert in some cases.
Users where.
How many users in New York? All right, we got to keep moving, so I think you're out of time.
Okay.
Way to do this is you do select state, comma. So have we've selected more than one column before?
No.
Oh boy, this was an unfair challenge.
That's okay.
So we're gonna
Well, we
select,
got halfway there. So.
okay. So we're gonna select state, and then we're gonna select the count star, or count ID, or count, something that's unique.
Yeah, that worked.
How many in New York?
Is there a way to make them alphabetical?
Like descending order.
Order by alphabet.
Wait, you're counting them yourself by ordering them by state. You just counted them yourself.
No, I didn't. No. It shows up in a table, but like the states aren't in order. I had to look for New York.
Oh,
By state.
okay.
Could you do group by state?
Yeah,
That's what I was trying.
That's what I did.
So you can do state count star from users where, no, not where, group by state.
Yeah, that's what I did, but they don't show up enough in order.
What did you order?
See what I mean? That's why I was looking for New York.
Well, how about this? Order by state.
Okay.
Should there's no semicolon after state?
There is. So the full thing would be select
Got it.
state count star from users
They do count for me.
group
Okay.
by
What states are they?
state order by state. Nope.
Is that state and count?
What's that?
I got a table with state and count.
Why won't it tell me like where it says more? I click on that, it won't tell me.
Oh,
You just got
arrow
it.
key down.
Okay, so
Click on the terminal,
we're-
arrow key down.
this is pretty cool.
Hit J, it sounds weird, hit J.
One thing about group by that you have to keep in mind is that
Try it again.
it's very tricky how this is working. We're saying group by state. We're not saying group by star, right? We're not saying group by
Arrow keys.
anything other than state, but we're selecting two things. If we went here and did, I'm going to copy the one-liner just so it's easier to edit.
Well, now we can-
If we said select
is
state,
MD the last
comma,
one?
birthday,
No.
comma, count from users group by state, order by state, right? This is going to say this doesn't work.
Down there.
And it prints out,
Oh, I
it's
see,
like,
CT,
this
yeah,
makes sense.
okay.
Why, right? Because we're grouping together everything with the same state, and we're counting up the row, the ID or the star or whatever it is that we're selecting other than that.
No.
But if we select a third thing and we're not grouping by it and we're not counting it up, we're not doing something that, this is an aggregation. This is a kind of, yeah. You could sum the IDs, like similarly,
All right.
you could add up all the IDs of all the users in each state, which I don't know why you'd ever do that, but you can use this function called sum. And this will give you the total of all the IDs in each state.
Okay, well,
So, and that's because, you know, and it's not going to complain about that because each column you're selecting is either part of the group, the grouping, right? You're grouping by it, so that's one way to aggregate it, or you're using a function to take all of the values in that group and aggregate them somehow. And if you try to do something not either of one of those two things, like, again, select birthday along with it, it's not gonna like that. And it makes sense because it would have to be a huge whole list of birthdays of all the people, or so it needs to know somehow how to process that. Yeah. Now you could group by state, comma, birthday, but that's going to be, you know, you're going to have a whole lot of AKs with different birthdays. It's almost useless because it's only going to group them together when both the state and the birthday match, right? You could just group by birthday. You could, let's see, how many people have each birthday? Select birthday, count, ID from users group by birthday, order by birthday.
Can you say that in plain English? Can you like convert that from SQL?
Okay, let me try. Take all the users, group them into buckets by birthday, and then give me the number of users in each bucket and the birthday that bucket is for. That is for that bucket. it's a little tricky. I mean,
Yeah.
it starts getting, and this is what I was saying, like, you know, the very easy queries are like, that's just a sentence, you can read it. As soon as you start getting into this, it's very mathematical, very set-based. You're manipulating sets and you're doing transformations and stuff like that. So, you know, this is, again, a very, very complex discipline, and this is something that people specialize in for their entire careers. And you can kind of start to see why. This is, you know, it gets more complicated than this. And, you know, a lot of people don't ever really, you know, I have plenty of coworkers who really never touch this stuff. They do mostly JavaScript and mostly imperative style programming. Not, you know, working with data, there's people who pretty much do this almost all of the time. I've worked at companies where there are people who only ever did this. They literally never did any work that was not written in SQL like this.
So now I'm imagining what this young lady does on TV. She's on this cop show when they say, oh, hey, Mary, look up the white cars and the witness was
Yeah.
only able to get a partial license.
Oh, yeah.
plate.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, I mean, it's not everyone's not on solving crimes with it, but
right,
but
but
they
I mean,
are
but that is.
they are learning things. Yeah, like taking data, combining it in ways that is useful. There's a
Right.
lot of ways to do that. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Yeah, look, two people have the same birthday. So it's very rare, but some birthdays are shared by more than one person.
Okay, can you ask, I don't know
There's
why, but I can't see, like where it says more, I can't get it to show me. Excuse me, I'm so lazy, I'm rolling this little leg.
Good trait in a programmer. What do
See,
you
like
mean?
how it says more?
Yeah.
How do I even see this? Oh, just enter.
Good trait for a program.
Okay. Is that what we were trying to get?
Yeah, you
Oh,
can
yeah, two
control.
people had, okay.
You can do Control C to quit it, not whenever you want.
Okay.
Okay.
That was a good move.
One thing we didn't do was enter.
Oh, it's
Okay.
enter.
Next challenge. Count up the number of messages that each user has posted, and give me the name of the user and the number of messages. This one nobody's going to know how to do, because this is the next thing.
What is it?
The count the messages that each user has posted, if they've posted any messages.
Oh,
Give me the number of messages they've sent and their name, not their ID, their name and the number of messages.
You say it again. I'm just gonna go to the bathroom.
The name of each user that has sent messages and the number of messages they've sent.
The name of each user.
And the number of messages they've sent, if they've sent any messages.
Okay.
Because most of these users haven't sent any messages in the data. This one, you can't select anything from users because it's users, it's not messages, right? That's the real problem here. So this is what you use a join for. This is a new thing that this is a very unfair problem.
Very trick question.
Yeah. So join is like, what other data should we go and get so that we can combine it together with the data that's in our from. So if we select from something, we want to join with something else. And there's many kinds. You can do an inner join, left join, right join, full join, or a cross join. Usually you're going to combine this statement with what's called an on clause. So rather than just saying join together all data from users and all data from messages and mash them together, you're going to want to say join all data from messages with the data from users when the user ID matches the message's user ID. So you're gonna tell it how it's supposed to pair together that data. It doesn't automatically know what to do just because you have a foreign key or whatever. You're gonna tell it like which columns you want it to match up, and how, because of that, it's gonna look for matches and then give you pairs of data from each one. And all of these different kinds are like this. It's like, they're basically ways to say what are the results that it's going to give you back. If you do inner join, it's only going to give you back results where it finds a pair, and there's some data on both sides, there is a user and there is a message and they match. The left join, if table A was messages, this is going to give you all the messages and any users that match those messages. But if there was a message that matched no users, which we know is impossible because we have a foreign key constraint, but it doesn't, it doesn't know that. So if no user matched the message, it would just leave those columns blank. Otherwise, it would fill in the user for those messages. A right join is the opposite. So it would find all users and then the message that matches those users if there is a match. And a full join is like everything from both tables and any matches for either table. And then a cross join is something else entirely, which hardly anyone ever uses, and it's some mathy stuff. It's a Cartesian product. You're curious? And I've never actually used it, but it's sort of a thing that someone in theory uses for some reason. Anyway, there's a little tutorial on this, and one of the assignments today is to do a little activity where you do some exercises with joins. I'll bet there's much more stuff, but let's do a little joins and let's break. So here's how we would do this. We would do select. So what are we selecting first? We need the two things are the username and the number of messages. So we'll say users.name. Now, because we're going to start using more than one table at once, we can't just say select name because we don't know, more than one table might have names. So we're doing table.name. And if the table had like special characters, that's where you totally need the double quotes, but we don't. So we're going to say select users.name, so the name from that table. And then the thing we're going to do is count again. And we're going to say messages.id because that's, every message has a unique ID. That's a good thing to count. From, so we're going to say users, but now we're going to actually join it. Sorry. Yes. We can do pretty much any join we want, or any inner, left, or right. Or no, we can do inner or left here. Because if we're selecting users, we'll get every user. And if we do left join, we'll find any messages that they've posted, and we'll count those all up. And any user that has no messages will, I think we might still see a 0, or because there's a null, it's not going to return. It's either not going to return them because we're counting, or it will return them. We'll see. Messages. And you put an on here. So on users.id equals messages.user ID. So this is what I was saying. When you do this on, you're telling the logic that's going to pair this data together how it's supposed to find the pairs. And it says it's a pair whenever this statement is true, right? And this statement is obviously we're matching the user's ID to the message's user ID. They should be the same if the user wrote that message. Okay, I think that's it. Nope. Oh, I forgot to group it. So I hope no one else hit enter. Now you have to type the whole thing. From users. Left join messages on the blah, blah, blah. Okay, no semicolon. Now we need to do group by users dot name. And I told you that very helpfully. Because we're counting, it already knows we're trying to do some kind of aggregation. So it sees something that's not being aggregated. And it's like the shape of this doesn't match. You have too many users. You got to group them together somehow. and we get every single user, because we did the left join, we get every single user even if they didn't write messages. So that's what the left join is for. And some of them we see have many messages. Most of them we see have no messages.
Could you go back to the command?
Yep.
That you,
I'm going to paste this in the Slack
Okay.
now. Select. Let me just write it into Slack and then select users.name count messages.id.
There's a comma there, right?
There's a comma after users.name.
I
Yeah.
missed the after comma. Okay, got it.
From users left join messages on users.id equals messages.user ID group by users.name.
oh,
Okay, that big old one-liner, I'm just going to paste that in this time. Hopefully it's correct. Cool. So we have a bunch of zeros, and this does exactly what we want. It tells you the number of messages that each user has sent. Now, if we want to say, well, I don't care about all those users with zeros, most of them have zeros. Well, you say, instead of a left join, you could do a, no, you have to do an inner join. Because that's like, it's only going to produce a match at all if there's at least one message for the user to match on, right? So inner join is like both sides must be there. Left join is only the first one must be there, which was users. So now we see users that have messages, and there's only 10 of them.
You can also order it by messages, by count.
Right.
I just did that, it worked.
So we could leave it as a left join.
Yep, I did it, I changed it to inner join so it takes out the zeros, and then I added order by at the end.
So we could do group by this, and we could actually add order by
Count, parentheses, messages, dot ID.
count messages.id, but we can add one more thing on the end, DESC, which is descending. So we can get the most posting users first,
Oh, okay, cool.
and then it'll descend down.
that's the same command, just with DESC at the
And
end.
I put the left join back, but that's fine because all
And
the zeros are at the bottom
So
now.
ascending is default for order by?
Yes. And you can do ASC, I think, if you want to be explicit about it, yeah. But yeah, so that's only 10, and then they're all zeros from there.
Fine.
So that's a join. That actually went better than, I mean, I know it's something that, you know, when you start looking at it and we start trying to apply it to different problems, that's a very simple join, and you can be joining 3 or 4 tables. You can be nesting different things, you know, selects inside of, you know, a join and then a select outside of that, and then it's, you know, you can combine these things in some very scary ways. But
Could you go back to that command with the descend, because there's something,
yes,
DESC, right?
yes.
Messages, ID, DES.
I'll change this back to inner join, and I'll add this to the Slack just so we have a nice little
Okay.
sample.
So you don't want to have the DESC on the group by.
So
No,
if,
you took that out.
if
Well,
you
let's
were
say
a
right, you're missing.
database
So
What do you
DESC
call them?
goes with order by,
Database?
right?
engineer, or what do you call it?
I mean, so if you see like somebody's called a back-end engineer, they'll generally have a lot of overlap with the database, but won't only exclusively do it. If you are an exclusive database person, you're often called a database administrator or DBA. I don't think they've ever gotten any newer words for it, right? It's just DBA. You're a DBA, yeah.
Do you work with
And that's, you know, if you're a DBA at a decent company,
I make
you are
DBAs
set
myself.
for life because they are never going to mess with their DBA. Like there are 0 companies that are going to give the DBA a hard time because they're the person who knows how everything works. They know how all the data, where all the data is. Like, and so, you know, if you want job security, it's an excellent track to get into.
You just tell them, I have my own system.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Give me a corner office, don't mess with
Yeah,
me.
I'll be needing a raise.
it's sort of true. And it's like, it doesn't even matter whether you want your own system. You're going to end up with your own system because there's so much, you're going to be working with data so much, and there's so much of it. And
Is
So-
that more aligned with IT? Like, I mean, if you're not, like you-
So, I mean, I would say a DBA is very much like someone who is programming application level logic. They're not sort of engineering the servers and the systems that run it. They're sort of building the code that's running for like usually like core business functions and selling, buying and selling, and vendors and inventory and customers and data like that very often. So, and you're making things that are like your customers. If you're a DBA, your customers are like usually like a whole team of people will have customers who are within the business somewhere most of the time, and they're like, you know, we want something that automatically processes all of this data, that we get a daily report from somebody and we want to process it and integrate it, or we want to send somebody a daily report, or we want to be able to go to a dashboard and look at, you know, some statistics or some numbers or whatever. There's a company that just sold to Salesforce for 15
Oh,
something
I saw
billion
that.
dollars.
Yeah.
That's a company that just does tables of data. And it's a company that's like, okay, we make tables of data that anybody can use. They're like, it's like Excel. It's like a magic table where like you don't even need a database or a DBA, just pay us the money. A lot of people do that, so they have a very good business. But you know, a lot of businesses are like, something gets important enough, and they're not just going to use an out of the box, off the shelf solution. They're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and many and possibly years building it themselves. You know,
Because they're bad at it.
yeah. Anyway,
Can we take a break?
yeah, I think it's time for a break, and then we're gonna do some, a little more of sequels. There's not that much left. Update and delete, come on, these are way easier. And then homework, and then let's do a little bit with adding to our chat room app, and then we'll call it a day. So we have, I don't know how much we'll actually be able to get to add to the chat room app. I was gonna add rooms to the chat rooms, you know, and have that, but we'll see. All right, break time. Do you do anything with the Zoom when it's break time?
Just turn it off.
All right, we'll be back in 10 minutes. Karen and everyone on the internet. Stop.
Someone is sending me an email saying that I can learn the math and statistics in 8 hours.
All right, we're back live, hopefully. Karen, can you hear us? Hello. Yes, definitely. Cool. All right, let's do the last bit here, and then a little more activity, and will be a wrap. Okay, so there's a lot more to do with selects. You can do distinct, which is like only where all the things you're selecting are unique from all the other sets of things you're selecting. You can do having, which is like a way to filter after you group. So you can group and then check where the group has some property, not just the where the rows have some property. You can window, which is a way to, I don't know if it's in every database, but it's a way to like fast compute, to sort of scan through some data and do something as you go. And it's a way to performance. You might not see that one for a long time or ever. Or the having, that's pretty rare.
Is the window like an interpreter kind of thing?
The window is more like you're telling it to remember something as it looks through the data, and when it remembers something, it can do a running sum or running, not just like sum is a kind of window where it's actually going to look at each value in turn and accumulate it into a single sum, right? You could do the same thing, but not a sum. You could do the same thing, but make it an average or something. Well, average is already built in too. But something that's not built in, you could accumulate somehow custom-wise, and it still would run fast like a sum.
Can sum only be used on that, like integers? And like window has to be used on other things?
Probably, yeah, something sort of like that. I wouldn't worry about window. It's like a very custom kind of sum, and a very, it's not only that, it's a way to do it much faster than without it. It's more of an optimization than anything. A limit is like, there's a size, you can say only give me 10, the next 10. You can order by something and only do the top 10, limit 10. I forget, how do you skip? Do you just say skip 10? You can do paging with this. So you can say like, skip some number and then limit to some number. And I forget whether the word is skip or not, but it's some word and I never write it, but you can do that. And there's also like set operations. You can union or like intersect data. So you can say like, select, everything that meets condition A and then union it together, join it together with all the other data that meets condition B. And that's
I'm sorry.
well, that's different from a join, because if you have a table like this, and I'm making a square with my hands, Karen. If you have a table that is like got rows and columns, if you do a join, it's like putting two tables next to each other, sort of, and squishing them together that way. So each row, it doesn't actually work like that, obviously, because the rows can match different rows or no rows or many rows, or, but it's sort of like putting rows together with rows. If you do a union, it's like putting all the values in a column together with more values in the same column. So it's like vertically stacking two tables in a sense. The join is definitely not, they don't fit together like that all the time. So you're only joining certain columns and stuff like that. But that's, I don't know if I have a better way to describe it, but a union is like a whole bunch of data in a table and then more data, and it's all in the same shape. It all has the same columns, right? There's just twice as much of it. And a join, it's like there's more columns because you're joining together columns from two or more tables. So there'd be more columns than either of the tables potentially. Okay, so those are more things. We're not going to get into them. Again, it's a whole discipline. It's there's quite a lot, and we can do more at the office hours, and we should start like a data SQL group in Syracuse. There's a lot. Everyone seems to like this. Like that's pretty. I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm actually very happy that everyone's not having a horrible time, which is what I thought would happen. Yeah.
I mean, just learning the commands and stuff is a little little tedious, but just when you see what you can do with data, that's pretty interesting to me.
Cool, very cool. Okay, so update and delete from. So delete, it always goes together with from. And update's a little weird because you say update column name set, or no, update table name set column name where this, and there doesn't even have to be a from. And when you do delete from, and then some other stuff. So they're a little strange, but like I'll show you how to. They're not nearly as in depth, like there's not nearly as many things that you'd normally do with an update or a delete. I think you can like join and update at the same time, but that's like, I always get that wrong and I always have to look it up and then I can never even figure it out after I look it up. So that's one of those way out there things that's not even that common, or is the domain of professionals who do this for all the time, not half of the time like me. So we could do select from, let's do the last query and let's find someone with no, oops. Let's do the last query, but make it a left join. So we get the ones with 0 messages. And then let's just pick someone. I'm going to pick Lodovico Giro dot. And copy that name. And let's delete this person. So we'll say, sorry, Lodovico, you're going away. Delete from users where, now if you just do delete from users and a semicolon, you're going to do a very slow truncate. You're just going to get rid of everything. So don't like when you type something like this ever into a real database, like don't stop paying attention and accidentally delete everything. Most times you'll have backups. We'll show you how to do backups, but yeah, make sure you say where something. Don't just delete everything. And you get it right. You know, often it's good to select the same thing. Select from users where whatever. Check that you know you have the right one, and then delete. Actually, let's do that right now. Select star from users where name equals this name. And we check that that's the right one we want. So now we can go back, and instead of select star from, we'll do delete from. And nothing else changed, so it's a safe thing. And we get delete 1. And then if we go back and do our select again, it's gone. So it does pretty much exactly what you'd think. Now you can delete 100 at a time. You could delete everybody from New York or whatever. But like this is, you know, it'll delete anybody where the where clause matches, just like a select will read anybody where the where clause matches. Now you can do update users set birthday equals 1920/01/01 where name equals, or sorry, ID equals 1. Let's just say, no, ID equals 100. We'll pick whoever's got ID 100 and we'll set their birthday to a different value. And we get update 1. Now you'd want to probably select and check that be very careful you're changing the right data, of course. But that is how you delete and update. And then, you know, pretty much anything else, if you add a from here somewhere and do like joining and stuff, that's where update gets really, really confusing. But we're not even going to try to do that because I'm totally going to get it wrong. And it won't help at all. You could do that where you like use different tables to filter by joining together and then update the ones that match that filter. You can get really fancy with it. Let me post those two in the Slack. Okay, so we've modified a couple users. Great. That's updating and deleting. And that's pretty much it for today. We are going to do a little bit of activity before leaving, but the assignment is keep working on new data models. And I think this weekend let's maybe bring what you have on if you come this weekend, or message me and check in with your data models. It really doesn't have to be anything real at this point. I think it's still supposed to be just you're thinking about what the pieces of data are and how they relate together. And don't worry about getting it perfect. Like, it's not set in stone as soon as by the end of next week. Like, this is something that it's just, we all have to be working on starting now. And, you know, I think, you know, by the end of next week, I'm hoping that the grand capstone assignment of these 2 weeks, I would like a data model diagram from everybody, and I would also like a little Express app or just JavaScript app that makes those models in SQL. And we'll get into that. You know, don't go and do it this weekend because we're going to get into that next week. But work on the model itself, the tables you want, and the diagram. So that's the homework. This here, if you want to try some cool join exercises, this is like an interactive page, and you can try join exercises. And then this, if you want to go read about a whole bunch of crazy database stories, this is like some really gnarly, like, academic discussion of how Twitter worked as of, you know, 6 years ago. So it probably works differently now, but it's pretty far out there if you're really interested in some mind-bending data stuff. All right, let's go back to do a little more exercises. So if we go back to yesterday, I think let's try to add this chat room model, because right now we've counted up, there's a bunch of fake messages. If we go to like receive, it's going to print out all of those messages, and they're just flat messages, and there's 1,000 of them, and they're all just nonsense words. But each one has an ID, and each one has a user ID between 1 and 10. So this is why it only printed out 10 users have more than 0 messages, because every single message has a user ID of one of those 10. So there's 1,000 users, but I only assign, you know, the messages are only for each one. So each user has a lot of messages that has one, and we can work with them a little bit. Now, let's say we want to put, let's say we want each user to, not just to be one big giant chat room where it's like everybody who types goes into the same thing and it has the user and the message. But let's say people want to be able to start chats with each other, and then have just the users who join a room are going to create and see the messages for that room, right? That's a pretty common thing. And it's how, you know, any sort of messenger app is really going to have this kind of feature, because, you know, it's not just one big room where everybody talks. It's like you start a chat, Slack is like this, and AIM Instant Messenger is like this, you know, all that stuff. So let's add some rooms to our data model. And it looks like this. As we saw, each message, let's just make a decision. Each message is in one room. You can't put a message in more than one room. You can't put a message in no rooms. So it's always one. It has a foreign key. That means it has a foreign key to root, something called room. It means that foreign key cannot be null. It must be there, and it must be a real room. And many users could be in each room, any number of users, not just 2. And every room, or sorry, any user can join many rooms. So that a user can participate in lots of rooms, and each room will have lots of users in it, potentially. So we have this middle table, and we've effectively made a many-to-many. Another way to draw this would be to remove this and then just have one line going to here. And this line would have this fork thing on both ends. And I don't even know whether that would be 0 or more. Yeah, I think it is 0 or more on both ends, because there can be empty rooms and there can be users with no rooms, right? So this is a different way to write the same thing. I generally like kind of avoid doing this pretty often because I don't like finding out, oh, I need to make a new database table. But if you use the JavaScript stuff that we're going to do next week, sometimes you don't even have to. You just can say literally many to many, and it will automatically make the table in the middle for you and do all of that for you. But in any case, this is another way of writing the same thing. We're just not being explicit about showing that there's got to be a user to room table in the middle. So we need to add 2 tables, room and user to room. And we need to make a foreign key on messages that goes to the room. And that's it, because this one will have the keys on both sides going to both of these. Okay, let's get back to our DDL, data description languages. We're going to do create table rooms. And this has an ID, of course. This has a name. And that's it, right? It doesn't have any keys. You know, a message has a key to a room, but a room doesn't have a key to anything. It's just an ID plus a name. And that's all we need right now. Okay, create table. Hooray. And I'll keep these going in Slack, but I won't post them all yet. And if we go back to yesterday, we have this alter table, whatever, add constraint, unique on ID thing. So we're going to paste this and edit it. So we're doing alter table rooms, add constraint, room ID unique on ID. So that now is going to force every value in the ID column to be unique. Okay. And that's it. That's the whole table. That's all we're going to do for rooms. Now the middle table, the one that links together users and rooms, we need to create. So we do create table I'm going to call it user to room. Like there's a whole lot of different conventions for this. So actually, let's call it users rooms because we're using plural names for things and whatever. But this is the table that links together one user with one room. And we're going to say this let's make it have its own ID, because I know I've been going on about just make everything have its own ID, but it won't necessarily in every case, because the user plus the room should be unique too. And you could effectively say that's unique instead if you wanted. But we're going to just follow the convention here. It has an ID. They're all big ints for whatever reason. This is only going to have other IDs in it, though. This is going to be user ID, big int, and room ID, big int. So that's that. So now we're going to alter that table so that its ID is unique, but
So
the other, yes.
User room is like the association table.
Right. So users rooms is just a bunch of bookkeeping records which indicate that a particular user is in a particular room. And because there can be as many of those as you want, independent of users and rooms, you can have the same user in as many rooms as you want, and you can have as many users as you want in the same room. So it lets you make multiple of either in both that are associated to either. And you need the table in the middle to do that because it has to have a different, it has to be there have to be a different number of these records than either of the others, of course. Okay, so we've created that. We're going to alter that to add its unique constraint. User, oh man, my pluralization and everything is pretty awful, but users, rooms, ID, unique, users, rooms, whatever. User room, so these are singular for some reason. User, oh man. This is users, rooms, ID, it's plural, whatever. So we alter that to make its ID unique just because, that's good. And we're going to now add some foreign key constraints to make sure everything now has the right links up. And then we also have to alter the message because each one of those goes in a room, right? Okay, so we're going to say this thing is our foreign key thing. And I'll try to type this one out. Maybe. We're running out of time here. We have alter table, alert, alter table. Users, rooms, add constraint, FK, users, rooms, user ID, foreign key. The foreign key is on user ID, and it references the table users and the column ID in that table. Uh-oh. Syntax error. Oh, I put an foreign underscore key. That's not right. Okay. So now I'll hit up and we're going to make a very similar one, but this will be room ID. And the foreign key is the room ID column, and it references the rooms table, the ID of that. Okay, so we have foreign keys and we have our unique constraint on our middle table there. That's quite a lot of constraints, and there's really no data in that table. It's just a whole bunch of linking up of stuff. Okay, and then finally, we have one column we have to add. We got to alter the messages table. Add column. And this column is going to be called room ID. That's another big int because it's a key to the room ID. Now this will probably break. Nope. Okay. The next thing will break. So we just added a column. We called it room ID. I thought it was going to break because, oh, it's a foreign key and it's empty right now. But it doesn't even know it's a foreign key. It just knows it's some data. So once we try to make it a foreign key with this kind of thing, it's probably going to break. So we do alter table messages, add constraint, FK, oh man, messages, room ID, foreign key, room ID, references, rooms ID. Huh. I guess because there's, oh, wait, what? Why did that work? Let's see what, so we added the column room ID and we made the constraint so that it references the room ID. Maybe it's okay with it being null, like it doesn't have to reference a room ID. Maybe the default is that they're null. Oh boy. So there's probably all kinds of other things you set in the foreign keys to whether it's nullable or not, which corresponds to whether this has a circle here or a bar here, and so on. But possibly, I guess the defaults are not what I thought they were. Let's see, select star from messages, limit 5. So this is a way to just give me a couple messages. And room ID is empty. So it must be like okay for it to not have a room ID, which I don't like that default. That seems like less safe, but okay. So if room ID is there, it's got to match. So let's see if let's test if that's true. Let's update message number 1, and let's assign it a room ID that doesn't exist. Update messages set room ID equals 999, where ID equals number 1. Okay, so as soon as you try to add an actual value there, it must be nullable. Oh, okay, so if we were doing in our original create table, if we really wanted this to be forced to always have a value here, and then it would break when we have the foreign key, we'd want to say ID big int, user ID big int, room ID. We'd want pretty much all of these to say not null. I think you have to tell it every time that it's not null. And the ORM will handle this for us, but our database isn't quite as safe as I was claiming. But that's what you have to do that. So you can alter it to make them not null, but any data that didn't, if we tried to do that, like if we try to do alter table messages, what is it? Alter column, room ID. Yeah, I don't even know how to do that. But if we tried to make it not null, it would complain because every message has an empty room ID right now. It would say, well, I don't know what to put here, and you just said it can't be null, so it's not going to even do that. In either case, at some point, we have to figure out how are we going to populate the room IDs. So let's just say that we have our first 10 users, user ID 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're the only ones that these messages are being sent by. Every user ID is from 1 to 10. And this is just the sample data that I generated. So let's say the first 3 users are in one chat room, and then the next 3, and then the next 4 or whatever. So we'll say insert into rooms values. This one will be number 1. It'll be first chat. And I'll post that. Okay, this stuff is all the alter stuff. And then we add our first chat room. We'll go add our second. That's ID number 2. And we'll add our third. That's number 3. So now we can just sort of, if you had a database crash and problem, you'd be in the database like fixing data manually. This is something that is no fun to do because the stakes are pretty high and like it's easy to make mistakes and things like this. But sometimes you might find yourself, if you're a database type of person, just updating data to make it line up with itself because somebody broke something like yesterday and all the data since yesterday is broken. So you do something like update messages set room ID equals 1 where user ID between. Now you can do, I think between is inclusive. So it's 1, 2, or 3 if I say 1 and 3. This is like saying greater than or equal to 1 and less than or equal to 3. So that updated 289, and I can do the same thing 2 more times to go to the other 2 rooms. Room ID 2, where user ID between 4 and 6, and then room ID 3, where user ID between 7 and 10. In the real world, it wouldn't be nearly this easy to split apart this data. You would have an entire day of horrible just this, but for a whole day. Okay, I'll paste these into Slack. And now once we've done that, we have messages that are inside, each of them are inside a different room. And so this room has 289, this has 306, and this room has 405. So one of the cool things we can do right now is I have my server still running over here. And it's got node mon, so it should restart if I change it. So if we go to this receive right here, I could say select star from messages where room ID equals 2 and save that. And immediately if you go, so this says, well, you can easily see it's a very big response, and it says the size is 100 kilobytes, which means there are 1,000 messages, and it goes all the way to 1,000. If I receive again now, it's going to be much smaller because we've just filtered to only the ones in chat room 2. And if you notice, all the room IDs are 2, and all the user IDs are 4, 5, or 6. So this is how you would load just what to display for user 4. Like if user 4 says, I'm logging in, now I'm going to room 2, your query would look more like this because you'd only want them to see the messages that are listed in their room. And when they post a message, you have to know what room they're posting it to as well. So that's a new field we have to add when we do the send. But first, let's make this thing a parameter. Let's make this a room ID. So we can actually control this from outside of our API, just like we're controlling the text in the message and anything else that you can send to the API. Now, let's say, what is the convention for, I need to look this up real quick, express URL quargs. So there's a way to pass it some data in along with receive. Express routing, route paths, route handlers.
You mean as far as the path, or?
Yeah, how do you get a quarg?
And then
But then what is it called? What is it called inside the function? Do you remember?
rec.params.that.
Awesome, thank you so much. Okay, so here we have room ID, and then we're gonna dump, we're gonna have this whole replacements thing, and we're gonna need this, but we're gonna grab that room ID from this magic express thing, which has sucked it up from the URL. So you'll see what this means in a second. Let's do query. Let's break this out into some lines. And then let's paste our big blob here, which has replacements in it. And the only replacement we need is room ID. So the replacements are all the things in our query that we want to replace safely. So the only one we're replacing is room ID, and the value of that will be req.params.room ID.
Pretty sure.
Okay.
80%.
All right, 80%. I think that looks reasonable. So now we've immediately allowed this endpoint now to work with any chat room separately and return different data. So if we do receive now, well, this doesn't work because it's gone. It doesn't know that there's no such thing anymore. You need to do receive / and then a room ID. And so I'm going to say receive for room 1. And look, every result has room 1 in it. I can do receive for room 2. And so I'm safely basically controlling what we're querying for from outside the API when I make this request. And then in a way that allows you to basically load exactly the data you need to display for any number of chat rooms. Now, obviously, you need a lot more endpoints to start using this correctly, because you need to be able to say, like, join room or something, so that you know which rooms to list for a user. And you need to know, like, our users actually aren't in any rooms right now, and they have to be joined to. So we need to start linking that up, and we need endpoints that will say, join room, list out the rooms, list out the messages for any room, post a message into any room. And each one of those will take the appropriate number of parameters so that it knows what to fill in for each of those foreign keys. And so that's where the data ends up. And so it'll be organized in the way we want. In the case of a message, it's going to have to learn not only what the text of the message is now, but which user is posting it and which room they're posting it in. So that could be through any kind of, you could include it right here when you do the put. So we could add, like, room ID is here. And I guess we'll do this right now. Or you could say send to room 2 in the same way, so it's sort of similar. But one or the other way, you have to be able to receive that value, and your server is going to have to be able to handle any number of people posting to any number of rooms, all one after the other. So it's going to have a way for those people to tell it which room and which user each message is for. Is that kind of a lot? We only have 10 minutes left, so I kind of rushed through that a little bit. But how does that sound to everybody in general?
Complicated.
It's fairly complicated, yes. We're not going to be, so this is partly why we're not going to be using a lot of the SQL stuff. We're not going to have to set up any of that first part where we did all of this wiring up of the tables. We're not going to really be doing that. We will be working at the level of just JavaScript pieces. And this is really going to be in 2 weeks when you're talking to Max. There's going to be a lot more of how to use all of these to process the data. But for next week, what we're actually going to do is instead of having these all manually write parameters in and have to do replacements and match this and that, we're going to have it all sort of like use the methods that SQLize provides to write this data. So in this case, if we were going to write a message, seriously, how wide does it have to be to not be mobile? Okay. Querying. So there's create, and you do something like this. So it's once we have the model set up, it's going to be more like message like this, dot create, and then you're going to pass it the JavaScript object, which has the value for each field that you need. And they're going to be user ID, room ID, text. And you get them from the API. So there won't actually be any SQL necessary in order to do all of that that's required to write that, to substitute the values in and to write that. But that's really what this SQLize is going to be doing, is taking what you're telling it to write and then actually constructing that whole SQL statement for you and inserting the things in the right places and then sending that to the database. So a lot goes on to get it to the database. And that's really all we're trying to do this week, is sort of go at the level of like what's happening inside the database and how you would do it without this. But it'll be rare. You will rarely have to, parse, get the replacements and write the queries yourself. Probably not at all after starting Monday. So. Okay, well, does anyone want to do a couple more fun queries, or should we wrap?
My computer died.
Oh, might be a sign. All right. Okay.
Tornado wrap.
Yeah, I can't think of anything that's going to be fun and short. So let's call it a day, a week.
Call it a week.
Yeah. Thank you for all your time and attention. Good
Thank
job.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I shouldn't just
Thank
close
you.
my streaming.
Once I got in the groove, I was okay, but at first.
Office hours will be like probably Sunday, either before, after, or during, or all three. The coding, the meetup, or whatever we're gonna do. Does that sound good? I'll send out the time and we'll do a Zoom.
All right, that sounds good.
All right, if I'm still sharing, goodbye. If not, sorry, bye.
Yeah, Zoom works.